the southern port city of Mariupol is on the brink of falling to Russia's military. Russia has given the last Ukrainian forces there an ultimatum to surrender or, quote, be eliminated. ABC News national correspondent Marcus Moore joins me from Kyiv now with more on this. Marcus, what's the latest on the fighting throughout the country?
Well, Diane, the fighting has been relentless. It continues even today. Most of the heaviest fighting is in the eastern part of the country, where Mariupol and other places in the eastern part of Ukraine, where for weeks we have been reporting on the heavy fighting there, and also the potential for Russia to pick up its attacks, and it's offensive there, and that's what we have seen today and over the weekend. You mentioned Lviv, where there were a number of airstrikes this morning. There have also been airstrikes here in Kyiv, and throughout it all, everyday citizens have. Some of them have been returning here to Kyiv to try to get back to their lives, to some bit of normalcy. But as we have seen today, there is no normal right now. The air raid sirens continue to go off, and there are still a number of checkpoints, and there is a real sense of tension in the air, not only here in Kyiv, but in some of the surrounding communities as well.
And Marcus, Lviv has been considered somewhat of a safe haven throughout this war. In light of this latest strike, does it seem like that's still the case?
Well, there has always been the threat of violence and airstrikes in Lviv and really across the country. But for many Ukrainians, it has been the safe haven because it is in the west, so it's farther away from the heaviest fighting. So a lot of people have gone there because they're still in their native Ukraine and have been somewhat removed from the heaviest fighting. But today is a clear example of why officials have said that it is far too dangerous for people to return to some of these cities. And yes, while Lviv, for the majority or most of this conflict, has been relatively quiet and safe, today is different. 4 airstrikes, rather, that we know of landing at targets there, and the threat persists, not only in Lviv, but Diane, also here in Kyiv, where officials said Russia was expected to pick up its attacks as retaliation for some of the other events over the weekend, including the sinking of the Moskva, their flagship vessel, just last week.
And Marcus, Mariupol is now reportedly on the brink of falling to Russia's military. What's the latest there, and what would it mean if Russia does gain control of that city?
Well, Diane, Russia wants control of that city because if they are able to capture Mariupol, it would allow them to create a land bridge from Crimea and on up to the Donbass region, and would really give them an upper hand on being able to connect their forces and control that part of the country, and then potentially have an easier time to move farther to the west. What we know right now about the fight there is that Ukrainian forces that have been there fighting, the remaining fighters are apparently surrounded. And as you mentioned at the top of the hour, the Russians gave them an ultimatum over the weekend, giving them just a few hours to lay down their weapons and surrender. There's been no indication at all that those forces have surrendered. In fact, President Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, said that they are still defending the city and they will continue to do so. President Zelensky describing it as a humanitarian crisis unfolding there with no access to food, water, or medicine, but those fighters are still defending the city.
All right. And Marcus, what is Ukraine's strategy at this stage of the war?
Well, as you know, Diane, they have been in a defensive posture throughout the entirety of this conflict, with Russia on the offensive, and that has not changed. And what they have been calling for is weapons, reinforcements from the West. President Zelensky said over the weekend, or he reiterated, that what they need most is support from the West in the form of weapons, and that is their strategy at this point, to keep up the fight and to continue to hold off Russia. And we know that the United States is sending $800 million in additional aid to the Ukrainians, and some of that artillery and personnel carriers, along with drones and even helicopters. Some of those elements started arriving this weekend.
All right, Marcus Moore in Kyiv, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.